All right. Now, you guys know what year this is? Meryl, what year is this? What year is this? 5,783. And you got to figure that the day of rest is the seventh day, right? We also have a millennial reign of 1,000 years, which would be, so if we have the calendar right, which I hope we're off by 217 days or 17 years, that means we got to wait 217 years before Jesus comes back, because that'll be 6,000, then we got millennial reign. I'm just hoping they got the calculation wrong on the sinning day. So, trying to bide some time. I'm waiting for your husband to come out. All right, fine. He's going to miss it. All right. Oh, I'll sit on this one over here. This one's soft. All right. There's this little boy. Some of you might have heard the joke already. There's a little boy riding trike. Every morning he drives his trike, and this guy comes up in this hot rod, a Charger. Is that what you have? Challenger, the Hellcat, right? No. Anyways, he comes up, parks at the stop sign, and the little boy rides up to him and, is this on? Yeah, turn it on. I want to turn it on. Here he comes. So he comes up to the Charger and he goes, Challenger. Guy looks down at him and drives off. Well, he comes up next day, goes out on his trike, goes up to the Challenger. Daryl looks down at him, takes off. Well, this happened for a few weeks, right? Finally, the boy comes out there and goes up to him and knocks on his Challenger. Daryl opens up the door and says, what do you want, little kid? And he looks up and says, you want a race? Sure. So he slams the door and he takes off, man. Smoke everywhere. I mean, just, those are fast cars, right? And he's just going on, and he looks in his rearview mirror and he looks behind him, the little kid back there just going, and he goes flying past him, right? He's like, man, this kid is fast. So he downshifts and he flies past the little kid. He's like, I've never seen a kid go so fast on a tricycle. He has to be like 6 or 7 years old. Oh my gosh, this little kid all of a sudden flies past him again, comes to a skid and stops. He's like, Daryl comes up, parks his car next to him, opens up his door and goes, kid, how'd you go so fast? When you slammed your door, you got my suspenders in the door. All right. Yes, well, it actually is. It's going to be online, I suppose. So, hope you guys enjoyed that one. I haven't told that one in a long time. All righty. So, we're going to be talking about the harvest is plentiful. But it's going to have a little bit of a different take on it. So, you guys have to be patient with me. And it's going to take a little while to show you all this stuff. All right? Fair enough? All right. Because I was praying on it, and God showed this to me. All right? So we can read in here, and we're going to read in Scripture here in a second. But the one thing I want you to remember is how many Christians are in America. All right? Just think about that. All right? And he said to them, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest. Send out laborers into the harvest. Now, I'm going to go with a little analogy here so you guys have maybe an understanding, but there's 1.3 million people on active duty military. And then with the reserves and National Guard combined, we have about 2 million soldiers and airmen and seamen, right? Sailors. So about 2 million military people total. Now, if we went to war, major war happens, what do you think is going to happen? Huh? People get drafted? Well, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to have to go to the veterans. They're going to start looking at the veterans. Maybe not me, maybe I'm a little old, but they're going to look at the veterans. There's 16.5 million veterans in America. Now, why would they go after the veterans? Of course, they're the draft. But what they do is they draft veterans first. They make them, force them back on active duty. Why would they go after the veterans? They're already trained, right? Wisdom, okay? They're familiar with military. They already know what to do, right? So they go after the veterans. Well, in America, there's 332 million people here. 63% of us are professing Christians. Did you guys know that? So that's about 210 million people. Now, unfortunately, only about 50% of them, according to the stats, go to church. All right? So that leaves us 105 million Christians. Now, in the Tri-Cities, we have over 200. I feel like I'm going really fast today. No? I'm doing all right? Okay. I'm going to slow down. All right. But there's over 200. I know why I'm going fast, because I'm hungry. I've been talking to these two about going to lunch, and I don't know, he hasn't said yes yet. So, all right. But anyways, there's over 200 churches in the Tri-Cities. All right. Now there's over actually 300,000 people in the Tri-Cities, right? But I just narrowed it down to 300 for easy math. 50% of that would be 150,000 Christians. Get my math? All right? Pretty simple. So if we take that 150,000 and put it into the 200 churches, the average church size in Tri-Cities would be 750 people. But there's only a few big churches here. Most churches are relatively average. The average church right now is 80 people. So on any given Sunday, now actually I wouldn't even say given Sunday, but church goers runs somewhere between 16,000 to 40,000 max. So that means there's 110,000 minimum Christians that don't attend church. They're like the veterans. Okay? Does that make sense? Yeah. So that is the harvest that we'll be talking about. The harvest out there that's already familiar with this. They're already professing. Why don't they come? Let's read here. Not neglecting to meet together as the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see day is drawing near. We need to learn to encourage these people, right? And you know, I mean, you can't go, why don't you go to church? You know? It's kind of usually my approach because I know them well enough. But I have fun with it. You know what I mean? What's going on? Whatever. But when we look at this, why a lot of professing Christians never attend church? Why don't they? Anybody? What you think? They got hurt by a church, which is true. Teresa and I got hurt by a church pretty bad, actually. I mean, the final straw for us, we were in the foyer. The foyer is probably the size of our church right here, in our sanctuary portion of it. We're in the foyer, and the pastor comes up, and there's a whole bunch of people at the church. There's probably 400 people at the church that attended, right? Comes up to Teresa and I and says, talks about us getting divorced. I don't remember exact words, but talked about us being divorced or getting divorced or going through a divorce, whatever it was, out loud in front of everybody. But even if it was true, it's not an appropriate place to say that. You know what I mean? That'd be confidential between us and the pastor, not everybody needs to know. But the bad part of it wasn't even true. So then the next week when we had our meeting, I was on the board, I confronted him. So why would you do that? It's not even true. Then he denied saying it. Then I asked the executive pastor, you were standing there, what did he say? He goes, I heard it too. You know, so I resigned and we left the church. But that was just the final thing, you know what I mean? But we didn't leave the church. We just left that one. It's like when I go get food and I don't like their food. I just don't go back to the restaurant. Doesn't mean I stop eating, kind of evident, right? But that is one of the reasons. I heard a pastor give a whole bunch of reasons, and they were true reasons. So I got a few of them here. I didn't go through the laundry list of reasons, but some of them here you might find humorous. There's a lady that said, I don't go to church because it's too cold in the wintertime. He goes, well, you don't even come in the summertime. He goes, yes, but there's rattlesnakes in the summertime. So that was her excuse. But these are all true excuses, right? Doesn't mean they're great excuses, they're just true. There was another person that talked about, well, Pastor, we're not settled in yet. We're still settling into our new house. Well, they've been there 7 years. Really? How long is it going to take you to settle? I mean, you go to our house, go to our garage, there's a few things still not settled, you know. Move it to there and don't know what to do with it, all right? We're not hoarders or anything, so. But now here's another one. We don't go to church because there's just so many of them. We don't know which one to choose, right? Now, one of the things I want you to understand here, and I didn't understand it so much until, this is going off the note a little bit, I didn't really understand it as much until I probably became a pastor. And then it kind of started making sense from my perspective as a pastor. When you have people that hop from church to church, right? But they want to be connected. The pastors, when you're new, I want to hold off a little bit, especially when you just talked about leaving a church, because how long are you going to stay here? You know, because when someone leaves and they're in some type of position that has influence, they make a negative impact on the church. I mean, especially this size, it's the way I know everybody, you know what I mean? So I can see from a pastor's perspective how, you know, but when you stay in a church, not only do you build up trust, familiarity, but we also know the skills that you have as well, so you can maximize those. So if you really want to make an impact, nobody here is hopping that I'm aware of, you know what I mean? But don't hop, you know. If you have friends that do that, talk to them. You know, I had one person 2 weeks ago. They weren't friends or acquaintances, I know, so it wasn't in a position nor in the crowd that I felt would be appropriate to challenge their theology on this. But they said they like going to different churches because they can hear different messages from different pastors and they get more verse. But they're not being used. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of times it's even a similar one as saying, well, I'm a Christian, but I don't go to church. I'm a Christian, but I don't want to be well grounded, you know? So that's my analogy. Now this one here is actually true, this next one, okay? There's empty seats. Yeah. You know, I mean, one of the things, I remember when I went to seminary, they talked about if your church is under 50% capacity, you're going to shrink. If your church can be at 70% capacity, that's the best number because people come in and see, oh, there's people here, I'm comfortable, and there's room to grow. If your church is like at 90% capacity, people don't stay because there's not enough seating, right? So there's a fine line of where you need to be. But people say, oh, I don't want to go because they come in, and I'm assuming you guys all stay here because you agree with what I say, at least how I preach. But see, people come in here and they've never been here before. They might even like everything. They might like the worship, they might like the preaching, but they still in their spirit says, well, why is there so many empty seats? You know? I mean, when everybody comes, it looks pretty full here, you know. We only have 100 chairs. I'd like to be able to buy more. You know, that'd be nice. You know? But that's a reason. Now here's a couple reasons that I've had as a pastor. Pastor, Seahawks are playing. They play early, I'm not coming. Hopefully God's not a sports fan. You know? Sorry, I took the day off when you came to the gate. It's hot down there, but I was watching the Seahawks. You know, if that doesn't happen. Here's another one, all right? I went and I was like, hey, let's going on? These were friends of ours, so this is, I could harass them a little bit, right? So, hey, you didn't go to church. Oh, we were cleaning our garage. It's like they clean their garage every Sunday, right? Sunday's the only day they can clean the garage. And but, you know, the garage was clean, but that's what they said. But see, it doesn't matter. They just come up with reasons every Sunday why they're not there. I mean, if they get asked, you know. But see, the thing of it is if they don't get asked, they don't even care. Have you ever noticed that? You know? Some of the things, you know, when you go in there, and I told them the same thing. I was like, well, I hope God's not cleaning his garage when you go to heaven, you know. But there are legitimate reasons, you know, but there's no legitimate reason to stay away. Does that make sense? Because the Bible tells us to gather, you know. And if you're new to the church, okay, and you don't like the pastor too much, then go find a different place, you know? I mean, that's what happens. But don't leave altogether and say, well, when I get around to it, you know? But try to get grounded. You'll be used. You'll have opportunities. You'll get to know people. And then when you go through struggles, you'll be able to say, hey, I share stuff with him. I meet him every Thursday. He knows more about me than a lot of you guys do. He shares stuff with me. And we give advice towards each other, right? So that's a good thing. But if we don't know each other, we're not going to do that. Because I don't know if I can trust him with my information, right? Does that make sense? So how are you going to be able to trust someone with your information if you've never been around them? I mean, how many people here, this might be true, so this is a legitimate question, go to a church and let's say you had some, and maybe this is true, you had, and if you haven't never had it, then just make it up. But if you had something pressing that you, in your life, divorce, infidelity, lust, alcohol, whatever it is, something going on in your life, and you go to church, do you feel comfortable talking to that pastor right off the bat? Do you? Okay. Yeah, a lot of people don't because they don't know the pastor well enough. My experience tells me I got to wait because I don't know if he's going to be able to keep his mouth shut. You know? I mean, there's a lot of pastors, well, I talked to this person because, you know, I had to get some information. But then that person had to talk to somebody because they had to get some information. Next thing you know, a whole bunch of people know, you know? But that's never the right way of doing it. Hopefully the pastor, you can go to him right off the bat, first time, boom, he tell him the information, and he keeps it confidential. He knows he's supposed to do that. But a lot of people in today's environment is not so comfortable doing that. Because not everybody keeps quiet. Now you guys tell me something, it's okay, I'll probably forget anyways. So, all right. Now, among non-Christians who self-identify as Christians, the prominent reason offered for not attending worship service is they practice their faith in other ways. Okay? So, how we came up with the idea, and by the way, our Bible study, sorry we didn't start this Thursday, but I wasn't feeling well, and it wasn't so much that we couldn't have done it, but I don't want to get other people sick. That's the main reason, okay? And but we're going to do the Chosen series. We're going to start with season 1. We're going to watch it, and we got questions that put out. So come join us. You know, it's if you don't like it, then don't come back. But you might like it. You know, what else you guys doing on Thursday night, right? All right, come check it out. All right. But so how we come up with this idea is someone I know was talking to somebody they know, and they don't go to church anymore. And they were like, well, you should attend. And they said, well, we do. We go to this Bible study, which we happen to be the chosen one, and we do that every week, you know? So they were saying, we do gather. The one thing I know, there's a difference between gathering on Bible study on Thursday or men's lunch on Wednesday, right? Or the prayer meeting on Saturday, right? The men's meeting on Saturday morning, whatever they are, they're different than a Sunday. Because Sunday we come here to worship God. Not just because anybody can read the Bible. Atheists read the Bible, right? They study the Bible. But when you come to worship, it's a different connection. So that's why we gather. That's why God says, come to gather to worship me, right? We're going to learn about him, but he wants you to learn in your heart more than anything. There's plenty of scriptures that talk about this. So why don't Christians come? You guys really want to know what I think? I don't think they're Christians. I don't think you can ignore the Word of God and His commandments and still say you're a Christian. I don't. Now, I can't judge that. So if there's 110 Christians, professing Christians in the Tri-Cities, right, that don't attend church, all right, I don't know which ones aren't and which ones are Christians, right? I know there are some out there that are true Christians that don't come because they got hurt or they work on Sunday, right? Now, I don't know if that's the best choice to do, but actually I would say that isn't the best choice unless you go to a service. I know, The Garden with Tom, they do a church service on Saturday night, a full-blown worship service. That's how he started out. He's kept that up. You know, I don't know if there's any really worship services in the Tri-Cities anymore on Wednesdays that I'm aware of. They pretty much stopped doing that. But then that's okay. But you should attend a worship service because you're worshiping God, as opposed to saying, well, I got to make, $40 an hour, which is good money, or $15.74 an hour now is minimum wage. I know that because we have concessions. It's horrible. All right, but what is more important to you? Just like I started off at the beginning, winning the race, right? What prize do you want? Right? What prize do you want? The one in heaven or the one here? Now, obviously, most of you have been to my house. I'm not the greatest person of buying cars. I have an addiction. That's my crack. I go through way too many cars. I'm trying to stop that, It's okay to have nice things. It's okay to live well, Hey, Daryl has 27 cars, I think. He's always drives a different one here. So, but Matchbox cars, that's what they are. It's not what I'm saying, okay? God gives, and there's rewards with all that giving that you give, right? But we need to gather to worship. If we're not worshiping God and you're gathering just to read the Bible, you got a lot of good knowledge. How many people here know somebody with a degree? College degree? 4-year master? Yeah, do you know somebody? But I didn't want to dig ditches, and I didn't want to be a cop, and I didn't want to do all these other things when I was going towards retirement in the military, So I thought, well, I'll go get a degree, get an MBA. God calls me to the ministry, so I shifted and did that. But education doesn't mean a college degree. Education means that I went out and I learned a skill that is valuable that people are willing to pay me for. And what your value is different than maybe his value or your value, right? I can't say, his value is probably, he's a counselor, I don't know, $50, $60 an hour. That's his value, right? My value's $15.74. He can't tell me that, oh, Pastor, why would you want to? That's my value. That's what I'm comfortable with that, right? That's okay. So we're not here to tell you what your value is. You're the one that figures that. I got a little video here I want you guys to watch. Actually, I got 2 videos today. One's a short video, but this video here talks about why younger people aren't coming to church.
Well, more and more young adults are dropping out of church. According to a recent study, 66% have stopped attending. So what's behind this? Let's bring in Scott McConnell. He's the executive director of Lifeway Research, which conducted the survey. Thank you so much for being here. So we're talking about this issue of losing their religion and why these young people have abandoned church. Some of the things you found, 2/3 of young people stopped going to church between ages 18 to 22. Why?
There's actually a number of reasons, and the average person who drops out gives 7 different reasons.
Okay.
Top one being moving away to college.
Okay, we're gonna flip through these as you talk about them. So 96% cited life changes. Is that what you're talking about?
That's what
okay.
the biggest life change. The other one is just work responsibilities, keeping them from attending church.
Okay, so basically life gets busy. It's not necessarily an intentional decision, but it's life happens and they haven't really planned for it.
Exactly.
Okay, let's take a look at some more reasons why. The 73% said church or pastor-related reasons.
And that comes into things like not feeling connected with people at church. I mean, that's an important part of church life. But we also see that when they don't agree with some of the social and political views of the church, that's another reason to disconnect.
One thing I read that was interesting is some said that they felt judged, that there was a judgmental element, which is a really interesting facet of that.
That's a big factor that kind of weaves through both the political piece as well as just other decisions they're making in life. If they're feeling disapproval from the church when they pick a job and when they pick a spouse, that's going to weigh on whether they want to stick around.
Okay, so let's move on to 70% cited religious, ethical, or political beliefs. Now that just means what? The social issues, or they're finding themselves out of line with where the church is standing on. What issues in particular are we looking at?
It tends to be more on the political and social end. Honestly, it's only around 10% or so are actually no longer believing in God or the real fundamental beliefs of the church. It's things like the political views of the church, and when they feel like they're not being accepted, they're not being welcomed, if they have some different views, then they're going to be stepping away.
Okay, and last one we have is 63% said student and youth ministry reasons. What's that about?
So this is a new section of the survey because we've done this survey 10 years ago and a lot of the factors stayed the same. This is a new area, and again, connecting with your peers is a really important part of a young person's experience in church, and connecting with a youth leader is an important part of that.
So it's really interesting. So it's not necessarily a secularization of this group of people, but they're feeling disconnected, they're feeling unheard. So there is potentially a way to fix it, is the good news.
Absolutely. Church, we outlined some of those ways in a brand new Lifeway book from Ben Trueblood, saying that these young adults are within reach. And one of the biggest things that churches can be doing is for adults in the church to connect with young people.
Yeah.
When a young person can name 3 or more adults that have personally and spiritually invested in their life, then they're 3 times more likely to stay in church.
Wow.
When they notice their family doesn't like attending church, they're not going to stick around either. And so we see some of those patterns in their lives that the church can actually be doing something about, and their own family can do
Well,
something.
thank you so much, Scott. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate your perspective.
Things that, as a pastor, and I don't know what you guys think, or you think I just, spend an hour preparing all this stuff. I actually take it serious, Spend a lot of time, and typically I know, even before I'll end this series, I'll know what we're talking about next, and I start formulating it, getting it, all that stuff. So I want to do really well at teaching. And I'm not saying I'm the best teacher, but I'm going to give my 100%. And I know I'm better today than when I started, all right? But one of the things that I always struggle with is when, we come to church and it's like there's people missing, because I'm thinking, especially something like this, all of us need this information. We all need to know things, I mean, one of the things that I picked up on here, did you guys pick up that only 10% lost their faith? That means all the ones that left, they're still Christians, right? But they're not attending. Well, that's fine. We don't have to agree or disagree. But this guy's, he's the one that did the research. It says 10% lost their faith, or that lost their faith. The rest are still professing Christians. Now, look, we can be professing Christians from the pulpit as a pastor, and we know that pastors are going to end up in heaven and being God going, I don't even know you. You're not in this book anywhere. What'd you do again? Right? We know that's going to happen. We know there's people that sit in the pulpit or in the pews that are not going to be in heaven because they did it for whatever reasons. We don't know that. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people that say, yes, I'm a Christian. I can go downtown. When I went and did my seminary training, I did a survey. I got kicked out of the Walmart parking lot for doing it. But I ended up talking to a couple hundred people at Walmart, Yokes, and Fred Meyer's in the parking lots. I didn't know you had to have permission. But anyways, and first question I'd ask is, are you a Christian? 83% of the people in the Tri-Cities said yes. Then the next question is, which church do you attend? And it ended up dropping down around 23% actually went to church. And to me, that was amazing. That was how many, who's good at math, Joe? 60, 50 people? 50% of them didn't attend, it professed, right? 60% of them. So it's important that we know this. Why? Because this is somewhere that's easier. Now, we don't know if I go talk to you and you don't go to church, you don't go to church, and you don't go to church. One of them may not be a believer at all, but they attended church, they profess that they're Christian, but they're truly not. The other one's on the fence, the other one's totally committed in the sense, but they don't go to church because, they don't like eggs. All right? Whatever reason they use. So I don't know which one those is, so I'm going to talk to all of them, right? We don't know. Come on, you guys, I know there's a lot of us that work in the jail. There's a lot of us that go work on the street, right? Our church is pretty active. And if you ever go to the street, probably, 80% of them are professing Christians, if not higher. Same way with the jail. But I know they're not all Christians. You know what I mean? But we treat them as if they all are, because we don't know which ones are or which ones not. I can't read their heart. Only God can, right? But now, why don't you come to church? Right? So can I ask you a question? Okay? And I don't know if it's true or not. I can't remember. But prior to coming here, which church did you attend?
Last church I attended was Christian Alliance.
And how long ago, what was the gap between the two? 15 years. So why didn't you go to church? Any outreach. Okay. So, now, obviously, he attends here, See, but that was 15 years he didn't participate. Okay? Now, the one thing I would challenge you with, this is all of you. Okay? So, if I ask, Romero, what's God put on your heart? What's your ministry? You think God wants me to do this? To share His word, okay. Describe that then. Explain how God's put that on your heart. What does that mean then? To share His word, how?
Like in my job.
Okay.
It's trying to be an example. It's trying to get someone to believe whatever.
Okay. Now, do you do that? Yes. Okay. Do you do it well? I think you do. You talk to me about it a lot. Not everybody else receives it well, but I think you do it well. Okay. Now, how could you make that into a ministry, right? Outside of that part of it, because that's sharing the gospel. A lot of us do that everywhere, right? Doing it in your workplace or doing it around people you know is the best place because they know you, right? Random people you meet off the street, you still do it. But the likelihood of it impacting them is probably less than somebody that you know, okay? But I believe he could turn it into a ministry now by saying, you know what, I've been doing this for a while. I got a lot of experience at it, and I've had a lot of rejection at it, and I know how to handle the rejection. So he could create it into a class here and teach some of you guys, right? Not saying you have to do that, but that'd be a way of doing it, right? So if you went to a church where they didn't have outreach, I'd ask the pastor, I'd like to start a Wednesday service, whatever you want to call it, a Wednesday outreach. Would that be okay? Hopefully they would say yes, right? And then, so if you don't see it where you're at, and you feel called to do it, then why don't you try to create it, right? All right. The other thing, the political views, they didn't believe in some of the things that are being taught in the church, right? Typically, that's the political environment that's out there, and we're opposed to that. And honestly, I would like them to, and I hope I could do it soft in the sense of I'm not going to chase them off, but I'm not going to sit here and say, it's okay. We can't do that, I mean, everybody struggles. I mean, you know, what do you struggle with, Mike, the most? Yeah, if you want to share it. Eating, okay? So do you have somebody that can walk alongside with you that you can talk to about that? So, you know. So we want to be able, when someone comes in there and says, well, I don't agree with this with the pastor or what the church is teaching, right? It's okay, I don't agree with him either on a lot of things, right? But I do agree with the way he honors God. I do agree with the way our church is welcoming, whatever it is, right? So just being able to accept somebody for the way they feel is a lot of times okay. You know, there's two friends of mine, and both of them are polar opposite of me on the spectrum of political spectrum, right? They were like, how could you even vote for Trump, right? They were just dumbfounded that this next election, they said, well, if Trump runs, who are you voting for? I said, I'm going to vote for Trump. I'm not voting for Biden. And they were just dumbfounded by that, you know? But we're still friends, you know what I mean? I don't understand his point of view when it comes to the politics, and he doesn't understand mine. But it doesn't mean we have to be enemies, you know? We just have to be able to understand each other. I mean, and then the other day I was talking to somebody, and they were telling me about a whole bunch of stuff, right? Some crazy stuff. And I told him, I says, you can't be sharing all that with everybody because they're going to think you're crazy. And he kind of admitted, I'm losing all my friends and families because they're thinking I'm crazy. I said, I'm not saying I disagree with you, but you keep it to yourself. I said, you got to remember, are you going to run for office sometime soon? Congress, Senate, governor, president? They're like, no. And you ain't going to change anything anyways. Right? You can believe whatever you want. You might be right, you might be wrong, but if you are not in a position to do something about it, maybe just chill out a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Chill out a little bit. But see, when it comes to Christianity, we are in a position to do something about it. And a lot of people don't feel that they're well received, which they talked about up there, right? Well, they don't agree with my views. I talked to a young person the other day, and I was talking about, I don't know the name of the book now, but I was talking about that book about the dude with explicit pictures about having intimate relationships with young boys. And they're putting it in the schools. Yeah. And I told them about it. They're in their 20s. They said, well, did you look at the book? Did you see it? Like, in other words, I had to have eyewitness to make sure that this is acceptable. Well, it's like Queer Eye for this something, right? It's all about being gay. And even if it doesn't have explicit pictures, why does it need to be in middle school? Right? They want to take out other books that, you know, in history books, but they want this in there. That doesn't make sense, you know? Has anybody ever read Washington state law on how they need to treat transgender people in the schools? Transgender man, okay, decides he's a girl by his own admission. There's no evidence. He just says, I'm a girl. Now he's allowed to change in the women's locker room. This is in the law. I looked it up. And he can stand in there and change. Now, if somebody feels uncomfortable, they need to provide a space for that person that they can change, at least have a curtain. Not the dude, the other female. If I'm changing in front of you, you don't feel comfortable because I'm in there with you, then it's your fault, so you need to go. Right? I mean, there was a complaint the other day about this transgender boy that decides he's a girl, goes in and changes in the women's locker room, and he has an erection the whole time. Yeah, he's transgender, but he still likes women, I suppose, right? So, anyways, I'm off track. What were we talking about? Spreading the seed. Okay? But see, when we spread the seed, not everybody's going to take it. You guys heard the parable, right? All right, this is the video I have for you. I was going to read it, but then I saw it in Chosen, and I thought, he does a much better job than me. All right, so here's it's a short little one.
How how can it be that I inspire and transform some people, but seem to threaten and repulse others? And so, as I said, I'd like to respond with a story. A sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil.
Other seeds fell on rocky ground where they did not have much soil.
Immediately they sprang up, for there was no depth of soil.
And immediately they sprang up, for there was no depth of soil.
But when the sun rose, they were scorched. And since they had no root, they withered away.
And since they had no root, they withered away.
The thorns grew up and choked them.
Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them.
And the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain. Some 100-fold, some 60, some 30.
Some 100-fold, some 60, some 30.
He who has ears to hear, let him hear. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Are yet rejecting me as I am in.
You know, when it talks about 10-fold, 30-fold, 100-fold, all those aren't up to us. I heard someone was telling me one time, the reason my church doesn't grow is because I can't handle a bigger church. I suppose could be seen, I don't know. You know, I have led 483 people before. That was the most I did, a lot of management going on. You know, I think I could have the ability, but I don't know for church-wise. But the one thing I know, all the research that I've had and I've researched, is anytime you speak the truth of Scripture and you read the Bible, people don't want to hear it. They had a church that, I think it was in Africa. It was an African or an African man. Okay, so I don't know if he lived here in America, or if he was in Africa. Had a mega church, over 1,000 people. And one day he was praying to God, and God challenged him, said, you need to start teaching the truth of Scripture. His church grew to 100. You know? So, you know, if you're going to hear the truth and listen to the truth and be taught the truth, God says not everybody wants it, right? I mean, how many people here have been to a buffet? I went to one last night. We didn't know it was going to be a buffet. We thought it was something else. It was at Toppenish at the casino. They had those crab big pots, right? That's what we went for. Well, they don't serve it on Saturday, but they did have a lot of seafood, okay? But how many people here have been to a buffet and they have the dessert aisle, right? And you go get the dessert, right? How many people here think it's good for you, right? But you sure do like it, right? You like it. And see, that's what people want. They don't necessarily want something that's good for you. They want to like it. You know what I mean? They want to like it. They want to be able to say, I like it. This is good. Right? Nothing's good except for what God says. If I say it, it's not good unless it's God's word. Otherwise, it might be humorous or something, I don't know, but it's not good. Now, I want to read a little bit here. I'm going to go through this, but I wasn't going to put this in the verses, and you didn't see this verse coming up next in your things, but I want you guys to understand, most of the time when you have a question in the Bible does what? Answers the question, right? Here, I'm going to give you a challenge. Get out your pencil, get out your pen, write it down, tap it into your phone. I'm going to give you a minute. Go ahead. While you do that, I'm going to read this. You don't have to look up there. You can just listen to me read. Find something to write with. All right? Fair enough? Then the disciples came to Jesus and said to him, why do you speak to them in parables? Right? In other words, mysteries. Jesus answers them, to you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For the one who has more will be given, and he will have an abundance. See, that abundance is something that we're going to get in heaven. Think about it. God wants you to do stuff for him. He wants you to win the race. He wants you to try hard. He wants you to be bold about him. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about this. Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, all right, all these movie stars, rock stars, highfalutin people that have cars and boats and yachts and airplanes, right? And they die with it all. The Rockefellers, they died with it, right? They had billions of dollars. But it's going to be taken away because they ain't getting it in heaven because they're going to hell, okay? So don't think we're talking about here. If God wants to give it here, that's great, that's wonderful, you can handle it. But what he's talking about, there's rewards in heaven. This is why I speak them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they even understand. So here's the challenge. Jesus on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why does Jesus say that? What's that mean? Okay.
Because, well, I believe that Jesus has taken on the sins of the world, and sin can't be with God, and until it was finished, he was filling as a man and
Okay.
mortal,
All right.
filling that separation.
Okay. Jesus fulfilled prophecy. Okay? Now, he wasn't able to say, oh, look at Psalms so-and-so. I think it's Psalms 92, 22. He couldn't say, go to Psalms 22. So he spoke the beginning of it, and they knew that he was talking about that entire Psalms. In other words, they did what for his garments? It's in the Psalms. They what? Ripped his garments. It's in the Psalms. They spit on him. It's in the Psalms. Look up Psalms 22 and read it. That's what he was telling them. This is who I am. I fulfilled that prophecy. He wasn't saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? He was telling the Jews at that time, go look here. This proves who I am. Think about it. You're on a cross dying, and yet you're still talking to the people. Forgive them, for they don't know what they've done. And by the way, go look at Psalms 22. Read the whole thing. Think about it. That's incredible. And if you didn't understand, what are you going to do? He's not God. Why would he talk to God that way? My God, why have you forsaken me? If he was God, he knows God wouldn't forsake him, right? Well, that's not what he was doing. So Jesus answers them. This starts with verse 18. Hear the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. Okay? This is what was sown along the path. Right? They threw some seeds here, and it didn't take root. It wasn't, right? And it got burned away. Some got thrown in a pile of bikers. Or I've even had people that, I'm not an alcoholic anymore, Pastor, and I used to go to the bars all the time. I want to go preach to them. Probably not a good idea. You know what I mean? Because you're going to be eaten up. Those thorns are going to eat you up. They're going to take over you. Right? That's what he's telling them about this. As for what is sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. You guys seen these people, right? Yet he has no root in itself, for himself, but endures for a while, and when tribulation or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately he falls away. We've seen these people. I see it in church now as a pastor. People come in, they talk to me, I'm like, they're going to be leaving too. You know what I mean? As soon as the person comes in and the first thing they tell me is how bad their last pastor was, it's just a matter of time before I become bad. You know what I mean? As for what it was sown among the thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world, deceitfulness of the riches choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. And you notice I put goat heads in here, Satan's demon plant. As for the ones who sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit and yields. In one case 100-fold, in another 60-fold, and another 30-fold. But you're producing. That's what matters, right? Professing, but they're really not believers. Remember when I said you're probably not going to like it? I don't think the person that sits there and professes, but they don't do what God asked them to do, I don't think they're Christians. There's going to be the cases where they've been gone for a while, and then they come back into the fold. But see, that's part of that 105. We don't know which ones those are, right? I mean, I can't remember, how did you get here? You contacted me, didn't you?
Well, I met you in Pasco.
Yeah. And you talked about outreach. And then I told him, yeah, we do outreach, obviously. That's why he came here. But if I would have ever been in that position, so you guys are going to be in that position. You're going to talk to somebody, and you're going to say, you're my friend. Why don't you attend church? And then they give you the reason. And it's just an excuse. You know, in special forces, now we start off with 1,000 applicants. We graduate with 63. But when we went and did our physical fitness test, we were at almost 500. After that, we were down to 383. We graduated with 63. Out of those people there that didn't make it, why do you think they didn't make it? Injury? Right? Didn't get selected because they didn't perform their standards. They got lost in the land nav. Why? They all quit. They quit. 100%. There's a few percentages where they were truly injured. But everybody quits because, one, everybody's injured. Do you know what I mean? So when they give you an excuse, the likelihood of it being a true reason, in the sense of a valid reason, is not true. As someone said, I don't go to church. Give me a reason why someone wouldn't come to church. Give me an excuse that you've heard. Anybody?
You don't want to go to church?
Yeah, they're Christians, but they don't go to church.
NFL.
Okay, give me a different one. I gave you that one.
All they want is your money.
All they want is your money. Okay? Would you be able to rebuke that? You're new here. Have I ever asked you for money? No. Right, it is. It's true. I went to a church where they always wanting money. You know, they even took a loan out to give the pastor a pay raise. You know? But you would be able to rebuke that if you're like, I attend this church. They're not going to ask if they do tithes, but they're not going to ask for money. Right? You'd be able to rebuke that, wouldn't you? Okay? Give me another excuse. The church is inside a building. Okay, so how do you cover that then?
That is true. It is true. The church is the people, not the building.
Correct. But if you're going to gather on a regular basis, you might want to be able to gather when it's like windstorm 90 miles an hour inside a building, because we actually tried to do it outside during COVID, and eventually we're like, you know what, we're going inside. The wind's too hard. Honestly, that's what happened. I think the third time we moved inside, right? Plus, you guys will be, it's too hot out, right? I mean, right? I mean, you'd be able to rebuke that. Now, it doesn't mean they agree, because if that's their excuse, they're probably, just like money, all right? They're just using it as an excuse. But you'll find the one where you say, well, what would your suggestion be then? I don't know how you cover it, but you could cover it, Give me another one. Huh? Their views. Good. That's a real good one, actually. The views of the church believes that homosexuals are going to hell. Do you guys believe homosexuals are going to hell? I don't know. If it's an individual person, if it's a lifestyle of a whole bunch of people, God says it's a sin. Right? But he says lying's a sin. There's a lot of things are sin. This is what I do know, though, is if you participate in church and you fall in love with Jesus, then let's just see what happens. Right? You don't have to sit there and outright say, because you might not feel comfortable at that moment, well, the Bible says it's a sin, right? So you're going to hell. I believe if you live a lifestyle like that, you're probably going to go to hell. That'd be my guess. All right?
So what used to bother me, what turned me away from religion for a long time growing up, my mom told me all the time, is that person's going to hell for this, that person's going to hell for that, and I always thought I was because I lied and I did things that my mom was telling me.
All right.
So it turned me away from God for a long time.
Yeah, but see, I can't do that. I cannot say that you're going to heaven. I can't say 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 you're going to heaven. Because I am not the judge. I'm not the arbitrator. Now, I can say your lifestyle looks as if you're going to go to heaven. You're living a life that's in alignment with God most of the time. But a few times where I've been around Kim, I've questioned that, but that's right. So, because I've had that situation happen, and it was very specific on homosexuality. And I said, look, I'm not asking you to change your lifestyle. I didn't change mine when I got saved. I was a whore. I didn't change. I came to church, I fell in love with Jesus, and stuff happened. What I would ask you to do is give Jesus a shot. I'm not asking you to change your lifestyle. What I'm asking you is to give Jesus a shot, fall in love with Jesus, and then we'll see what happens. All right? I've had one person say, well, what if I fall in love with Jesus and Jesus doesn't have me change? That's between you and Jesus. But see, I don't think that would happen. I can guarantee you, if you're sitting in this room, you're a professing Christian, you truly love God, you do things different today than you did prior to. Okay? What you used to do is no longer acceptable. And a good portion of it you didn't even have to try at. It just went away. Right? Just went away. Speaking of the heart, for yourselves are letters of recommendations. Each one of you is a letter of a recommendation. How many people ever called up somebody and said, I need a letter of recommendation? Right? What does that mean? I know you, and because you know me, you know my character. Right? So each and every one of us has a letter of recommendation from God to that person, right? To say, hey, here, this is what it's about. Written on our hearts, to be known and read by all. And you show that you are a letter from Christ, delivered by us, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God, not on tablets of stone, but a tablet of the human heart. That's why we do what we do. That's why we do outreach, right? You know? And the one thing right now, I know Mike does a lot of outreach. Still does it, yes? Should probably hook up with him, you know? We still got people doing outreach in different ways. We just got to make time to and the ability to do it, yeah? All right. Proverbs 3. Let not steadfast love and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on a tablet of your heart. Do you guys know that the heart has a mind? Do you guys know that? The Bible talks about it. It talks about how the heart thinks, right? You guys know that at times. We even have sayings, right? Follow your heart. But did you know that science just found out about that like in 2010? I always thought your only thoughts were up here. Now they know there's some down here. Maybe I can't explain it very well, me personally. But I did read about it. Hopefully it wasn't fake news. My son, keep my words and treasures upon commandments with you. Keep my commandments and live. Keep my teaching as the what? What does that mean, apple of your eye? I was going to put an apple up here, and I found some eyes to put up here, but they all looked weird when I put them on the screen. But what does that mean, the apple of your eye? I mean, every time she looks at Daryl, I can see he's the apple of her eye. She twinkles. Right? Every time Teresa looks at me, I'm the apple of her eye. Right? You guys know what I'm talking about, right? All right. Bind them with your fingers. Write them on the tablets of your heart. We need to read the scriptures. We need to have it in our soul, deep down. How are you going to know the truth if you haven't read the truth? Right? And if you don't like to read, then listen to it. Shoot, they got audible books. You can go online and download, or not even have to download, just go to Bible Gateway. That's what I do when I study the scriptures, because I like to hear it too. If I just read, I'll fall asleep or I get distracted and think about other things. So I put on Audible book, or not Audible book, Bible Gateway online, and then I'll push the little thimble to make sound, right? Push that, and it reads it for me. And then I follow along with it, yes.
The phrase apple of your eye comes from a Hebrew expression that literally means little man of the eye. It refers to the tiny reflection of yourself that can see in other person's pupil. To be the apple of someone's eye clearly means that you are being focused on and watched closely by that person.
Good. Did you guys hear all that? So, it's a reflection of your own self. And it's also a reflection of somebody watching you closely, right? Apple of your eye, even for our own expressions, is just same as they're important to me, right? So what God says here is His word should be the apple of our eye. He should be the apple of our eye. He should be important to us, right? If we can get up the worship team up there. Fellowship is essential for growth. All right? But for believers, those who truly do take the things of God seriously, do not forsake the gathering. Hebrews 10:11, not forsaking the assemblies of ourselves, right? So we're going to talk more about this in the next week or two, all right? About how do we reach the ones that are already professing, right? The ones that say, yes, I'm a Christian, but they're not participating. How do we do that? And we'll be talking about that. It doesn't mean I'm going to have all the answers. I'm doing research. It doesn't mean all the researchers have all the answers. But we'll talk about that. What does the Bible say about that, yeah? What does the Bible tell us? Because we already know that we're supposed to go reach the lost, but we also know that the laborers are few, right? But there's a whole bunch of laborers out there that aren't participating. So maybe if we got some of those, we wouldn't be so few. Yeah? How many people have you brought to the Lord where you know, because I was there, I know it's not us, let's not get ripped around my vocabulary, but I was there and I was able to bring them to the Lord, right? Because I was there at that time. Most of us, if we're honest, throughout our lifetime, probably less than 100, I bet. Truthfully. Right? Now there are some weirdos out there that have like thousands, but that's what God gave them as a gift, right? Okay? So we're not going to impact that many. But if there's 100 that I brought to the Lord, and they brought 100 people to the Lord, right? Now we sound like we're Amway. And they bring out 100 people to the Lord, right? Then all of a sudden that expansion grows. Now, if we're truly in the end times, there's going to be a great falling away. All right? So, but according to this calendar, the Hebrew calendar, we still have 217 years left. So maybe we should have a great awakening first. So you guys going to rock it? You guys want to celebrate it? You want it loud? No? Gosh, all right, go ahead. Sing it quietly.
Okay.
Well, don't early in the morning. I play it loud. This morning I didn't.
Okay, well, we had a different song, but since we're going to rock it, we had to